Today we have chapter 17 of Charlotte's Web by E.B. White. This is a shorter chapter, so you get a little break today. It's called Uncle. When they pulled into the fairgrounds, they could hear music and see the Ferris wheel turning in the sky. They could smell the dust of the racetrack where the sprinkling cart had moistened it. And they could smell hamburgers frying and see balloons aloft. That means up in the sky. They could hear sheep blatting in their pens, making sheep sounds. An enormous voice over the loudspeaker said, "Attention, please. Will the owner of a Pontiac car, license number H2439, please move your car away from the fireworks shed?" "Can I have some money?" asked Fern. "Can I too?" said Avery. "I'm going to win a doll by spinning a wheel, and it will stop at the right number," said Fern. "I'm going to steer a jet plane and make it bump into another one." "Can I have a balloon?" asked Fern. "Can I have frozen custard and a cheeseburger and some raspberry soda?" asked Avery. "You children, be quiet until the pig gets unloaded," said Mrs. Arabelle. "Let's let the children go off by themselves," suggested Mr. Arabelle. "The fair only comes once a year." Mr. Arabelle gave Fern 2 quarters and 2 dimes. He gave Avery 5 dimes and 4 nickels. If you want to, you can figure out how much that is. "Now run along," he said, "and remember, that money has to last all day. Don't spend it all in the first few minutes. And be back here at the truck at noontime so we can all have lunch together. And don't eat a lot of stuff that's going to make you sick to your stomachs. And if you go onto those swings," said Mrs. Arabelle, "hang on tight. Hang on very tight. Hear me? And don't get lost," said Mrs. Zuckerman. "And don't get dirty. And don't get overheated," said their mother. "Watch out for pickpockets," cautioned their father. "And don't cross the racetrack when the horses are coming," cried Mrs. Zuckerman. The children grabbed each other by the hand and danced off in the direction of the merry-go-round, toward the wonderful music and wonderful adventure and wonderful excitement, into the wonderful midway, where there would be no parents to guard them and guide them, where they could be happy and free to do as they pleased. Mrs. Arabelle stood quietly and watched them go. Then she sighed and blew her nose. "Do you really think it's all right?" she asked. "Well, they've got to grow up sometime," said Mr. Arabelle, "and a fair is a good place to start, I guess." So the parents are a little sad that their kids are growing up. While Wilbur was being unloaded and taken out of his crate into his new pig pen, crowds gathered to watch. They stared at the sign, "Zuckerman's Famous Pig." Wilbur stared back and tried to look extra good. He was pleased with his new home. The pen was grassy, and it was shaded from the sun by a shed roof. Charlotte, watching her chance, scrambled out of the crate and climbed to a post on the other underside of the roof. Nobody noticed her. Templeton, not wishing to come out in broad daylight, stayed quietly under the straw at the bottom of the crate. Mr. Zuckerman poured some skim milk into Wilbur's trough. He pitched clean straw into the pen, and then he and Mrs. Zuckerman and the Arabelles walked away toward the cattle barn to look at purebred cows and to see the sights. Mr. Zuckerman particularly wanted to look at the tractors. Mrs. Zuckerman wanted to get a freezer. Lurvy wandered off by himself, hoping to meet friends and have some fun on the midway, such as at the fair. As soon as the people were gone, Charlotte spoke to Wilbur. "It's a good thing you can't see what I see," she said. "What do you see?" asked Wilbur. "There's a pig in the next pen, and he's enormous. I'm afraid he's much bigger than you are." "Maybe he's older than I am and has had more time to grow," suggested Wilbur, but tears began to come to his eyes. "I'll drop down and have a closer look," Charlotte said. Then she crawled along a beam until she was directly over the next pen. She let herself down on a drag line until she hung in the air, just in front of the pig's big snout. "May I have your name?" she asked politely. The pig just stared at her. No name, he said in a big, hearty voice. Just call me Uncle.
Very well, Uncle, replied Charlotte. What is the date of your birth? Are you a spring pig?
Sure, I'm a spring pig, replied Uncle. What did you think I was? A spring chicken? Ho, ho, ho. That's a good one. Hey, sister?
Mildly funny, said Charlotte. I've heard funnier ones, though. I'm glad to have met you, and now I must be going.
She ascended, she was going up, slowly, and returned to Wilbur's pen.
He claims he's a spring pig, reported Charlotte. And perhaps he is. One thing is certain. He has a most unattractive personality. He's too familiar, he's too noisy, and he cracks weak jokes. Also, he's not anywhere near as clean as you are, nor as pleasant. I took quite a dislike to him in our first interview. He's going to be a hard pig to beat, though, Wilbur, on account of his size and weight. But with me helping, it can be done.
When are you going to spin a web? Asked Wilbur.
This afternoon. Late, if I'm not too tired, she said. The least thing tires me these days. I don't seem to have the energy I once had. It's my age, I guess.
Wilbur looked at his friend. She looked rather swollen, which means kind of bigger and puffy. And she seemed listless. She's like not as focused. I'm awfully sorry to hear that you're feeling poor, Charlotte, he said. Perhaps if you spin a web, you can catch a couple flies and you'll feel better.
Perhaps, she said wearily. She looked very tired. But I feel like the end of a long day.
Clinging upside down to the ceiling, she settled down for a nap, leaving Wilbur very much worried. All morning, people wandered past Wilbur's pen. Dozens and dozens of strangers stopped to stare at him and admire his silky white coat, his curly tail, and his kind and radiant expression. Then they would move on to the next pen, where the bigger pig lay. Wilbur heard several people make favorable remarks about Uncle's great size. So they're saying nice things about how big he is. He couldn't help overhearing these remarks. He couldn't help worrying. And now, with Charlotte not feeling well, he thought, oh dear. All morning, Templeton slept quietly under the straw. The day grew fiercely hot. At noon, the Zuckermans and the Arabelles returned to the pig pen. Then, a few minutes later, Fern and Avery showed up. Fern had a monkey doll in her arms and was eating Cracker Jacks. Just a fair food. Avery had a balloon tied to his ear and was chewing a candied apple. The children were hot and dirty.
Oh, isn't it hot? Said Mrs. Zuckerman.
I'm terribly hot, said Mrs. Arabelle, fanning herself with the advertisement of one of the freezers. One by one, they climbed into the truck and opened their lunch boxes. The sun beat down on everything. Nobody seemed hungry. When are the judges going to decide about Wilbur? Asked Mrs. Zuckerman. Not till tomorrow, said Mr. Zuckerman. Larrabee appeared, carrying the blanket he had just won. Oh, that's just what we need, said Avery. A blanket. Of course it is, replied Larrabee, and he spread the blanket across the sideboards of the truck, so it was like a little tent. The children sat in the shade, under the blanket, and felt better. After lunch, they stretched out and fell asleep. And that's the end of that chapter called Uncle. I thought it was pretty interesting. I didn't expect there to be such a big pig beside Wilbur. I thought Wilbur was pretty big himself. So, remember, every time I tell you, you have to check your old predictions, make a new prediction, and in next novel study, we will have a longer activity like a storyboard again. We'll do another storyboard. But this time, just predictions and checking your old one. So, good luck. And we're getting close to the end of our book. This is all we have left. We've already done this much. So I've been enjoying it. I hope you have as well. And I'll see you next time. Bye.